Stars war. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez.
Well, Turkey has downgraded diplomatic ties with Israel and frozen military cooperation ahead of a long-awaited United Nations report on Israel's deadly attack on Gaza-bound aid ship in 2010. According to leaked excerpts, the report accuses Israel of, quote, excessive and unreasonable force in its attacks on the Mavi Marmara, which killed 9 people. The report says Israel should issue a statement of regret and compensate the families of the dead, as well as wounded passengers. But the report also criticizes passengers aboard the Marmara and the other flotilla ships for what it calls a, quote, reckless attempt to breach Israel's blockade of the Gaza Strip. And in a major development with broader implications, the United Nations report also concludes that the Israeli blockade of the Gaza Strip is legal under international law.
The UN investigation was overseen by Geoffrey Palmer, a former Prime Minister of New Zealand. Turkey says it'll expel the Israeli ambassador and downgrade diplomatic ties to their lowest level until Israel drops its refusal to apologize for the raid and provides compensation. For more, we're going to go to Ramallah, where we're joined by Huwaida Arraf, one of the organizers of the Free Gaza Flotilla movement. She was on one of the 6 ships that were in the Gaza Flotilla when the Mavi Marmara was attacked. She's joining us by Democracy Now! Audio stream. And here in New York, we're joined by Norman Finkelstein, author of a number of books on Israel Palestine conflict, including This Time We Went Too Far, Truth and Consequences of the Gaza Invasion. In Ramallah, Huwaida Arraf, your response to the leaked report, the New York Times posted it online, of the UN.
Hi, Amy, Juan, Norman. Sadly, it's a completely expected whitewash of Israeli crimes. This panel's composition, not only its composition, but its mandate, was problematic in so many ways, and it wasn't designed to get at the truth of what happened or to get at justice for the victims of Israel's attack, but rather to arrive at political compromise between Israel and Turkey. And that's what we have. It's an attempt to whitewash the crime, set them aside, and in addition, it came up with some outrageous claims that completely contradict the findings of numerous human rights organizations and international law authorities, including various bodies of the UN itself, about the legality of the Israeli blockade. So very problematic.
And the report's criticism or faulting of one organization in particular, a Turkish organization that had some members helped organize the flotilla. Could you talk about what it said and your response to that?
Sure. It did say, you did quote that we were reckless, but it also said that Israeli soldiers faced organized violence when they tried to board the Mavi Marmara, which is completely untrue. We spent a long time preparing for this flotilla, and everything that we prepared the passengers in are the foundations of our movement, and what we do is based on nonviolent direct action resistance. This is not to deny that Israeli soldiers did face some attacks when they boarded, but you can't say that these attacks were anything more than self-defense because of the obnoxious way in which Israeli soldiers, and very violent way in which they took over the ships in a way that was intended to cause tremendous fear and commotion. They boarded the ships firing. Even on our very small boat, the boat that I was on was traveling right next to the Mavi Marmara, and we only had about 17 people on that boat. They boarded beating down people using tasers, firing stun grenades, and paintball pellet at people's faces. So it was completely uncalled for violence, so that some people, a handful out of 700 volunteers, reacted in what can be called a violent way. It was self-defense, so it was no way organized. And I'm saying this being part of the central organizing committee of the flotilla.
The UN's report notes that, quote, on the basis of public statements by the flotilla organizers and their own internal documentation, the panel is satisfied that as much as their express purpose of providing humanitarian aid, one of the primary objectives of the flotilla organizers was to generate publicity about the situation in Gaza by attempting to breach Israel's naval blockade. The purposes of the flotilla were clearly expressed in a document prepared by IHS and signed by all flotilla participants, unquote. unquote. The report then cites the document's statement of purpose, which reads, quote, purposes of this journey are to create an awareness amongst world, public, and international organizations on the inhumane and unjust embargo on Palestine and to contribute to end this embargo, which clearly violates human rights and delivering humanitarian relief to the Palestinians. Norm Finkelstein, your response.
Well, I noticed that Juan was looking perplexed at that statement. And I have to say, last night when I was reading the report, I was completely dumbfounded. And I had to keep rereading these passages over and over again. What the report stated, and all of you listeners should hear closely, because it was so shocking, so morally debased. The report said that we doubt or we question the true motives of the organizers of the flotilla. They said we have evidence that their real motive was not humanitarian. And the statement that you just quoted was the evidence that their real motive was not humanitarian, that they had this really sinister, nefarious motive. Their real motive was not humanitarian. Their real motive was, they said, the report said, to cast publicity on Israel's illegal and immoral blockade of Gaza. Now, I have to say, that is, and I'm meaning this literally, it is a new low. I read all the Israeli reports, in particular the Turco report, the one put out by the former Supreme Court Justice. It's about 300 pages. They never stooped to that level. They claimed that this handful of what they call jihadists, that they were looking for a confrontation with Israelis, or the Israeli soldiers, and they brought on weapons for a confrontation. This report does not claim that they were looking for a confrontation. It holds them morally culpable for trying to cast publicity on an illegal and inhumane blockade. With the Israelis, at least we're in the same moral universe. And it's a question of fact. What was the intent of these commandos? Excuse me, what was the intent of the activist? Was it to get a confrontation, or was it to cast light on what's happening? But with this report, we've entered a new moral universe. They are actually saying that to cast light on an illegal and inhumane blockade is a morally sinister act.
I'd like to ask, there were 4 members on this committee, one from Turkey, one from Israel, then there were 2 supposedly independent ones, the former Prime Minister of New Zealand, and Álvaro Uribe, the former president of Colombia, who himself presided over a period of the highest level of extrajudicial killings and assassinations in his own country. It seems amazingly strange to have someone like Álvaro Uribe on this panel as an objective member of the committee.
The Colombian president.
Well, it was clear from the moment that Ban Ki-moon, the alleged Secretary General of the United Nations, it was clear from the moment he appointed Uribe on the panel that it was going to be a farce. Beyond all the crimes for which Mr. Uribe has been accused and also have been documented, he was also known as being very close to Israel and advocating closer military relations with Israel. So from the get-go, from the moment the members were named, it was clear which way the report was going to go. But, you know, you always wonder, what are they going to come up with? How could they possibly justify certain things? They said that the blockade of Gaza, now we have to be clear, they said the naval blockade was legal. They separated it from the land blockade for technical reasons, which is no point in going into here. But they said the naval blockade was legal, and the grounds they gave were this. that Israel clearly faces security problems from Gaza, the rocket and mortar fire. Okay. And they say, to document the security problem, since 2001, some 25 Israelis have been killed by these rocket and mortar attacks. Fair enough. And then they say that many people have suffered psychological trauma from these attacks. Fair enough. Then there's the other side of the equation. There is not one word, one syllable on how many Gazans have perished as a result of Israeli attacks. It's not 25. It's not 250. It's at least at an order of magnitude of 2,500. We're not just talking about the 1,400 Palestinians who were killed in Operation Cast Lead. Israel always has operations in Gaza, has very fancy names. Operation Summer Rains, Operation Autumn Clouds, Operation Hot Winter, Operation Rainbow. All of it vanishes from this report. The only people who have suffered deaths in Gaza due to armed hostilities are Israelis. Now, let's say it's true. Fair enough. They have a right to impose a naval blockade to prevent weapons from going to Gaza for security reasons. Don't the people of Gaza have the right to impose a military blockade on Israel to prevent weapons from going to Israel? You can't even raise that question. It's beyond their comprehension. In fact, the irony is that's the law. The law is, as Amnesty International pointed out in its report, Fueling Conflict, under international law and domestic American law, it's illegal to transfer weapons to any country or any state or non-state party which is a consistent violator of human rights. So if that commission, the Palmer Commission, named after the former New Zealand president, if they had any integrity, they would have said, okay, Israel has the right to impose a blockade on Gaza, and the international community, because this is what Amnesty said. Amnesty says the international community has an obligation, that's what they said, to impose an arms embargo on Israel as well, because it's a consistent violator